on, man.
Tell me about these intense feelings of insecurity. So you'll never be good enough.
Never. Never. You asked me yesterday.
Family think that too?
Oh, Dad, especially. Yeah. Am I paying you guys for this hour or what? Like time? You're gonna give me,
I think you have to pay my therapist.
Oh, I see.
Live from the Talking Joe Studios, it's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and you are listening to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. If you are new to the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. You can find out all about us over at our website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. On Friday, the 3rd of November, I was in Des Moines, Iowa, in the USA, for the Assembly Required G.I. Joe Convention. Now, if you've not heard about this, it's a great convention held once a year. You can find out more at codenameiowa.com. Now, when I was there, I met my co-host, Tim Finn, for the first time ever in person, which was a delight, of course. Now, as well as being home to a G.I. Joe convention, Des Moines is the hometown of G.I. Joe artist Ron J. Wagner, and he is a regular attendee of the show. And while we were there, Tim and I had the privilege of meeting Ron in person and having a recorded interview, which is what you are about to hear. Ron will be well known to fans of G.I. Joe comics, especially his classic Marvel Comics run, which covered G.I. Joe 57 through to 76 with some fill-ins, and covered the Fred VII as Cobra Commander era, the Cobra Civil War, and more besides. He also did covers for the main run, as well as for special missions. He did a silent issue in Yearbook 3. He did a silent prelude for issue 21 that appeared in the Snake Eyes Declassified trade paperback from Devil's Due. And he also returned to G.I. Joe for the IDW era of ARA, where he did several issues, including 163, 166, 173, 186, as well as several covers. Beyond G.I. Joe, Ron has drawn for titles such as The Punisher, Nth Man, the Ultimate Ninja, Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight, and Morbius. I will now hand over to myself in the past, where I am joined by Tim Finn and Ron Wagner in an echoey conference room that we have snuck into.
Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
Let's just pretend that I just said something really nice and insightful about you.
And lovely. Thank you so much for that. Honestly, because no one's ever said anything like that before.
I'd like to thank the nice staff at the Hilton here who didn't kick us out of this little conference room in which we're squatting.
It's very nice of them. Very nice. They just don't know you're here.
That guy knows we're
here.
He said on the record, there's no records.
Got it.
He said I didn't let you stay, but they're not going to use this room till tomorrow.
Got it.
So we're actually, this is our first live in-person interview that we've done. I did a count. We've done a lot of interviews, but this is the first one where Tim and I are in the same room, and the guest is in the same room as well. So it's really interesting.
So we don't have to use so much modern technology to make it happen long distance. So,
but between the two mics and the laptop,
there's more technology, if anything.
Still some technology.
But yeah, it's great to have you on, and great to see you.
Thanks for having me
in person, and particularly such a sort of a creator who had a really big impact in terms of the comics. That era of G.I. Joe is for a lot of people, really iconic era, and the run that you were on is a lot of people's favorite, as I'm sure you know.
If I'd only known at the time,
Mark often likes to start with a question that jumps to the very beginning, and as a segue, I want to cut right in here and say, Ron, you knew that G.I. Joe was a really big deal when you were drawing the comic, and that people would continue to ask you about G.I. Joe many years later, right?
No.
Well, okay.
Well, because if you're drawing comics, you're really just sitting in a room by yourself, And so you don't really get any feedback. And if you're not doing like cons and things and fans and all of that kind of stuff, you don't hear how it affects people's lives. I think it's lovely now that I come to these things, and it was so much a part of everybody's life when they were young. But at the time, it was like a job for me. I'm just like trying to get this damn thing done every month and try to draw all of these weird toys with one single line drawing. Here you go, off you go, now draw it. And of course the editors don't tell you that kind of stuff. They don't. You may get like a fan letter from time to time from people, but editors don't sit around and go,
okay, so
many people love you.
Because do you know that the G.I. Joe comic book got a lot of mail at Marvel?
Yeah, but I didn't see it.
Okay, so Larry, Bobby Chase, the editor.
Larry might have seen it, but
no, it didn't tell you, didn't send any.
No. Again, I might get a letter or two. Oh look, but it was like because they don't want you to be full of yourself any more than you already are.
All right, I'm gonna pass the mic back to Mark to ask what is often our first question, or Mark's version of our first question for this interview. Mark.
Essentially, it's how did it all get started? So back to a little Ron, back in the day, how did comics enter your life?
My grandmother lived like 100 miles northwest of here.
And where is here for our listeners?
Iowa. We're in Des Moines, Iowa at the moment. And I grew up in LeGrand, Iowa, which is 60-some miles east. And then this Lorville, where my grandmother lived, was 100 miles that way. And we would go visit, and it was a little old town that had a little old drugstore, with the oak stuff and the fountains and all of that kind of stuff. And she would take my brothers and I there, and they just wanted candy. And I wanted comics. Because LeGrand was such a small town, it did not have a store.
Oh, wow.
So there were nowhere to buy comics, right? And so anyway, when we go to visit my grandmother, I was all about the comics, and predominantly like Sergeant Rock, and I was super into Sergeant Rock. I was a big Joe Kubert, Russ Heath fan, and so that kind of stuff, I loved it. So
can I go even earlier back? Because it sounds like in describing this, you go to this store, you go to this place, and you already love comics. Do you remember?
I don't remember where the first comic happened, but see then then everything was newsstand sales, right? So you're standing in line at the grocery thing with your mom, and there's comics right there on a rack, and they were like 10 cents or 25 cents back in 1910, and like, Mom, so that's.
Had you read newspaper strips?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so maybe that's a bridge.
Possibly.
Okay.
Possibly. I just knew from a very young age I loved comics, and predominantly, not that I didn't buy superhero comics and things, but it was the war comics. I've always been kind of drawn to World War II and things like that.
Yeah, sounds like a nice synergy to where your career sort of went and the focus.
Yeah.
Except for all those super heroic detours.
Yes.
Yeah. So at some point, did you realize that people were behind making these comics, and
it's
that might be a
interesting
profession?
because when I was a kid, I just didn't think human beings could do this, could draw this. Because I would sit down and try to draw them. I'm like, here's my first panel, and I get the second. God, this is hard, And so I just didn't imagine that real humans do. Of course, I found out much later that in fact they were very much real people. So no, it was all sort of a mystery beyond me. But it definitely segued into. For me, it was a gateway drug to books. Right, because now I was reading comics, and now I was like, and now I suddenly in middle school I was like, oh, books. I actually discovered a copy of The Godfather in our school library when I was in 8th grade or 7th grade or something. And I don't know if you've ever read The Godfather, but the first 30 pages are they don't know what's in this book here, do they? So, because
well, there's also this idea that if it's described in words, it's okay. If it's drawn in pictures, it's not good for kids.
I see.
Like a prose novel is fancy.
Right.
But the images are what could ruin a child.
Right. Well, I had the images; they're just floating around in my brain.
All right. So were you drawing at school? Were you the kid?
I drew all the time in school. Mr. Wagner, this is English class, not art class, and I'm practicing for my career. You know, that
Did
kind of
you
thing.
did you get little art jobs or draw for the yearbook?
No, I wasn't in. I wasn't that involved in school to be on the yearbooky thing. So
Okay.
that probably would have been too nerdy for me at the time or something.
Okay,
So-
but it's not like on the side you were drawing cool drawings for your friends
No.
for money.
No, but everybody knew I could draw. And then when there was like, oh, we need a backdrop painted for the play. Oh, Wagner can do it.
That's
You know,
what I'm
that
getting
kind of-
to.
Yeah, that
It's
kind of
some
stuff.
kind of nerdy.
Yeah,
involved.
and I had and this was later on in high school, and I had an art teacher. He was very much into airbrushes, so he turned me on to like airbrushing, and I don't know, I think we did like the whole city for our town or something, you know, that kind of thing, buildings and stuff. So, but yeah,
Okay, there are a series of jobs that you do before you go to school for art, right?
like jobs, yeah,
Job jobs,
sure,
as a high schooler
yeah,
or middle schooler. What are some jobs that Ron Wagner did then?
I washed dishes in a couple restaurants. I worked in some fast food places, Long John Silver's, Pizza Hut, those kind of things. And then before that, before I could drive, there was farm work because we lived the small town was next to farms and stuff. And, you know, I'd come home from school and Farmer Ted called and he wants you boys to come help bale hay. So off we would go, my brother and I. And so walking beans and baling hay and detasseling corn and all of this kind of Iowa kid jobs, I did those.
All right, and the reason why I'm asking this is to set up a possible idea that going to school to draw or drawing for money for a job
Didn't seem as like hard as work. Is that what it is?
would be your ticket out of here. So,
I had two options.
Okay.
The ticket out was either go be a rock star in a rock and roll band or go do this comic book thing. Both are equally mad.
were you on any track to any musical
I
track?
played in bands since 7th grade, so
Were you good?
well, probably not. Not in 7th grade.
What did you play?
I was the singer.
Okay, and you play guitar now?
Yes.
but that came later.
That came later. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I had songs. I've always had songs in my head, but I had to like learn how to play a guitar to present my songs to other people.
Okay. But in high school, the bands you were doing like AC/DC or
Yeah, and my band right after high school, before I went to art, we were basically an AC/DC Van Halen cover band.
Okay.
And I had tons of hair and screamed for 3 hours straight, and jumped around and all of that.
Okay.
I was younger then, so was my hair.
How did you hear of the Joe Kubert School of Comic Illustration?
I saw it in the back of the black and white Savage Sword of Conan magazine.
Okay, because it was Kubert School was advertising in comics.
Yes.
And still does.
Yes.
Okay.
And I was really into kind of that like John Buscema Conan-y thing, the black and white magazine, right?
Which I guess was probably edited by Larry Hama.
I don't know.
Hama doesn't start editing Conan until
Later.
after Crazy. So I think that's 81 or 2 or 3.
Because I went to the school in 81.
Okay. Hama's hired at Marvel to do Crazy.
Yeah.
So it's this school in nowhere,
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 3-year school.
Mm-hmm.
And you did all 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn at the Kubert School?
That comics are a lot of work, are not for the faint of heart. Because there was like, and I might be a little weird on my numbers here, but there was like, the first year there was 80 some of us, mostly dudes. You know, there was like 2 girls. You know, and half of the guys fought over, you know, the cute one, and then by the 3rd year there was like 13 of us left.
Right.
So I mean, it was just like, you know, 'cause-
Is this like that CalArts where some of the people are getting hired and don't need to do the 3rd year, or is this is boot camp and people can't?
I think it's kind of boot campy because I think you know, you think about like all of these kids, you know, like you were the best artist in school at your school, right? Like, oh yeah, he's the one, man, you know, that kind of stuff. And then suddenly you're going to a school where everybody was that kid. Suddenly.
And many of them are better than you.
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah, in a big way. So like you're not the best one, and and it's a whole thing. And now, instead of sitting in your bedroom and drawing, the Hulk or whatever, now like somebody expects you to do pages, continuity, right? And then you're going to do this, and then we're going to stick it on a wall, and then we're going to critique it in front of everybody, and that gets hard for people. Because some people just don't want to hear it or can't, And then there are people that didn't finish the school that went on to have like great, fantastic careers. Lee Weeks, Bart Sears, all of these they went to the school. I don't think they did all 3 years kind of thing, but but they're certainly fabulous artists.
Yeah.
And wasn't one of your contemporaries the Cubert brothers?
Both the Cubert brothers were there in my class. Yeah. So they were an enigma and a mystery when we first started because they never used their last names.
Because was one of your main teachers at that time was Joe Cube?
I think you had to.
Isn't he the third year teacher?
Yeah, you kind of had to stick around for Joe. Like you didn't get him the first year, and I don't remember if we had him the second year, but certainly the third year. So you kind of had to stick around for Joe,
right?
So
were you taking several different classes each semester?
Yeah, you got a bunch of different stuff.
Anatomy.
Yes.
Figure drawing.
Yeah, and figure drawing and anatomy are basically the same thing.
Right.
It's not like somebody said like, oh, we're going to learn all the muscles today, but we're going to learn how this goes into here. And I had a fantastic life drawing teacher, Ben Ruiz, and he's like this kind of Puerto Rican guy, and like, oh, you cannot paint a house until you build it. Or you're being seduced by the line, that stuff like that, so like just great stuff like that, so, but yeah, you had a lot of different kind of classes, and they had started their animation that first year, and I think we talked about that last night, like you didn't even have a light box or anything, but they had Milt Neal, who was like one of these original Disney animator guys. He designed Howdy Doody and all the puppets on the Howdy Doody show. I know I'm going back, but for those, anyway, but so there was like graphics and design, there was life drawing, there was sequential art.
The animation program was a separate track.
Yeah, and I
did not do that.
No, I almost did, but I'm like, I don't want to sit and draw a mouse 1,000 times for that kind of stuff. So,
what'd you do when you finished?
And did the school try and line you up to?
No, at the time,
because a lot of grads get work.
Yes, and I did too. My third year, I started drawing backgrounds for Stan Walk on World's Finest, and Stan went to the school, and one of my teachers was Sal Amendola, and who taught at the School of Visual Arts for years and years and years. But he got me a job doing backgrounds for Stan. So that was my first work.
Where did Stan live?
Stan lived in New Jersey somewhere.
Okay, so you would meet him, and he'd hand over pages, or you'd sit in his studio.
And I'd draw all the boring stuff, the buses and the cars.
Oh, right, that's because you're still based locally for the school.
Yeah, and so I'm doing that, and this is like my third year, so I quickly abandoned doing anyone's homework. Because I'm working on this thing now. I'm getting paid. And Joe came up to me once and he's like, what's going on? Because I stopped even doing Joe's stuff. And that's a cardinal sin right there. Other people you get away with, but not Joe. Right. And Joe was like, what's going on? Are you being lazy? What's going on? And I said, well, I'm working. I have work. I'm being paid to do work. And isn't that the point of this whole school? And then I got you're not a professional until May 17th when we give you the diploma. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know about that so much. So I get that.
Did you finish the work?
Yeah, I got everything done. I got out of there.
Okay. So what'd you do that summer?
I don't remember. I think I moved next door to Gray Morrow. Because I remember that kind of happened right after school, and Gray Morrow was a comic book artist from the 50s and 60s and all of that kind of stuff, and he just happened to be my neighbor when I moved into this apartment.
Total coincidence. Apartment that you live next to Gray Morrow.
And did that produce synergies? Did you?
Oh yeah, he was great. I went over there the next morning, and after I moved in, and I, hello, Mr. Morrow, and my son, come on in, kid, and he was just super sweet, and And I learned how to draw comics, drink scotch, and shoot large handguns because he had a shooting range in his basement. So great combination there, the scotch and the guns.
Larry Hama sometimes tells an anecdote about how cool Gray Morrow's basement shooting range was.
Yeah. So it was super fun. So and he was, because I was going into the city like every week, to Marvel and showing my stuff, or DC and all, like trying to get work. And I would come home and go see Gray, and no one's giving me work. And he's like, don't worry, kid, have a drink, and here. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so this is. Did you say 82?
Yeah, I started in 81, so
Okay,
this must have been 83 or
like
4 or something.
Pacific had started.
I think I did something for them.
Okay, so I was going to ask, you weren't just trying for Marvel or DC.
No,
there were other publishers making comics, ones that people don't remember as much, or talk about as much.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you trying to be Gray Morrow's assistant? Were you trying to?
No, I just fell into that. I just fell into that. Like
You did become his assistant.
Well, yeah, he was drawing. I was like I said, I would come home and like, I'm getting work. He's like, here. He was drawing Tarzan for a few papers around, and like, here, draw this, that he would ink, right? So he would give me work, and critique my stuff.
Right, so if you're penciling additional stuff in the Tarzan newspaper strip and Gray Morrow is inking it, presumably he's making it look like his stuff.
He's fixing it.
You're good enough to save him some time.
Yes.
But he's going to maybe slightly redraw it as it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He put necks on everybody.
Necks.
I wasn't
Ron,
drawing necks.
You weren't drawing necks?
I don't think so. Clearly I wasn't, because I'm looking at what he did. I'm like, how come this is better? Like, why is this better? And he's like, well, yeah, you don't draw necks. So, I learned a lesson there. So,
because I half remember an answer to this. So, are there other professionals in comics who drew who you got really good advice from besides Gray Morrow?
Gray, Bill Sienkiewicz.
When did Bill Sienkiewicz give you drawing advice?
I did the Blaze miniseries or something for Marvel, and he inked it.
This is the Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze.
Yes.
Right. He gets his own 4-issue
Yes.
miniseries.
Howard Mackey wrote it. Yeah.
Spun out of the Ghost Rider book. You penciled it. Sienkiewicz inked it. What did Sienkiewicz say to you?
He said, when you think of spotting blacks, you should think about using a broom to spot the blacks instead of a needle. Meaning you want big black shapes, and that's what gives you form and weight, as opposed to little things, because they don't.
All right, so when I think of, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong thing of Bill Sienkiewicz, but when I think of his art, I think of a lot of sort of Ralph Steadman and like, is it Sergio Tappi, like scratchy, messy.
Which I love. I love all of that.
But Sienkiewicz can sort of do anything.
He can.
So I'm seeing a lot of, not detail, I'm seeing a lot of loose, sort of crazy drawing. And what you just described sounds more controlled.
It's a controlled mess.
Okay.
Because his stuff is messy but it's still controlled. There's still like knowledge of the planes on the side of the face, and then there's structure and form, and so it's like he definitely likes it, roughs it up and whatnot. But still the basics are all there.
Okay. And that's the one time you worked with Sienkiewicz, those 4 issues of Blaze. Okay.
And I asked for him time and time again.
to ink your stuff.
Yeah.
Did it happen again?
No.
So, what was your kind of navigation, your route through your career, sort to take you from those early days at Marvel and Blaze through to G.I. Joe?
Oh, Blaze is later.
Oh,
Blaze
that's
is
later.
later.
Blaze
Okay.
is like 94, 95.
Yeah.
That's after like the
Right,
Midnight
okay,
Suns.
right. Yeah, I thought.
Because
So I did jump ahead on purpose.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the
there's-
question probably then is, what was like your big break for your initial published comics?
Well, again, I did stuff for. Is it Pacific? Is that what they were? Some other? I don't know. These
First.
I did stuff for some of those, and I forget, bounced around, and I went to see Larry, and he already had this sort of aura about him. And
Who got you to see Larry?
a friend of mine from art school, because this friend of mine who teaches animation at Columbia in Chicago, but he was a big Neil fan, like Neil Adams fan. Like he was a big Neil Adams fan, and somehow I think my friend went to see Larry. So he came back with frightening Larry Hama stories, and I'm just like, and the closest thing, because again I kind of wanted to do war books or whatever, but there weren't any war books then. Like that era had kind of passed. Even though Larry was doing that black and white Savage Tales book, I think it was.
That only lasts for 7 or 8 issues.
Yeah.
And that's a little later.
Yeah, but so it was later. So I
85,
came
86.
I came to see Larry. Or actually, I called him on the phone because you could do that then, and I told him who I was and all this stuff, and he said, I want to see 22 pages of continuity, or I just don't want to talk to you." And I'm like, I got it. I got that.
For those of you who haven't watched our Larry Hama interview episode, that's a pretty good Larry Hama impression.
I can't get low enough. I can't get my voice low enough. But anyway, he said that. And I said, well, I have that. I have 22 pages of continuity. Because he doesn't want to see somebody that just has pinups. Because that doesn't help him, right? Yeah. So I go up, and he looks at my stuff.
You're in his office.
I'm in his office, and I remember all the offices were like this. Like the editor's chair was tall, and you were on some wee little couch, so they're looking down on you all the time. So it was kind of a power move. But Larry's like looking at my stuff, and he's like, yeah, let's see, you draw like one nose, 2 sets of eyes, 3 ears, this and that, and then and I'm like, oh, okay, and then but he was super cool because he's like, you do 5. He goes, first of all, if you work really hard for a year, you'll be really good. And this is after 3 years of the Kubert School and like all this other nonsense. And then he said, if you do 5 really good superhero pages, I'll take it to every editor up here. I'll show every editor, right? I proceeded to pretty much ignore all of his advice, and then I went to DC, and I forget what I did over there, but it was basically a year later, right? And I came back to see Larry.
It was superhero stuff.
Yeah, I think it was. I just don't remember what it was right off the top of my head. So it's, but I come back and I come back to see him, and I'm like, boom, look, here's all this stuff I've been doing. And he just looked at like a couple pages, and then he started like trying to find me work. Oh. And then he gave me an 8-page thing to do for that Savage Tales thing. So I did like an 8-page story for that.
Which didn't you penciled and
inked it,
that.
and it was like do a shade because it was toned and everything. I spent so much time on it, and I did these incredibly tight like roughs. They were just and I went and I showed them to Larry, and he's looking at him. He goes, "Am I supposed to pay you for these?" He goes, "You're coming in tomorrow, and we're going to learn how to draw comics. That kind of, like we're going to do it. So I had to come in for a couple days, and Larry was all about anything that you're not doing on the page is you're wasting time, right? So it's like, here's your script, here's a page, and we're just going to start laying it out.
The actual art board.
Yeah, actual board. So we're not messing about with and I still do little roughs, but they're just like little scribbles and stuff. Like I don't sit and spend time rendering roughs, and I'm the only one that can read them kind of thing. So, and I think that was like the beginning. I did like a yearbook or something for a G.I. Joe yearbook. It was silent.
The silent.
That one. Which screws me up still to this day because I don't always think about word balloons. Because I'm like, I don't have to worry about word balloons. And
You mean
leaving space? Yeah, leaving space for word balloons. Right. So
there's this. I think it's a Jim Shooter adage, but and I think Andrew Wildman talked about this, but that. And Shooter surely did not invent this, but that you generally leave the top third of every panel devoid of anything super important, except for maybe heads,
right?
To leave space for word balloons.
Yep. Yeah. And it actually, if you're designing like that, you actually get a better design in your panels. if you're thinking about, like all this negative space, and I can move this down here.
Because word balloons aren't going to then have to cover like someone's
Stuff.
shoulder
Exactly.
or like the thing they're holding.
Exactly. Exactly.
So breathing room.
Yeah, breathing room, and again, it can give you a more instead of this thing being in the middle of the panel, suddenly you have to move it down here and make it smaller. So now suddenly things are a bit more interesting.
When we talked to Rod Wiggum, he talked about a Larry Hammer boot camp day, and I think basically described it as like the most stressful day of his life, essentially. So do you seem to sound like you went through a similar sort of process?
Well, sure, yeah.
Intimidating, stressful, or because you had gone through the 3 years of school?
Yeah, it wasn't so stressful for me. I mean, it was just like a, and I don't remember like going home and crying. I just like yeah, all of that makes sense. All of this makes sense.
I have to imagine that some of that might be, oh, here's this editor who can draw.
That too.
Which is unusual.
It
right?
is.
Editors in
It
comics
is.
tend to be writers, or they want to be writers.
Yes.
And there are just a few then who also drew.
Exactly.
And so it's not like, so the editor knew what your job was, and if he could do it as well as you, or kind of as well as you, and he was showing you how to do it faster or better, that's only helpful rather
Only
than
helpful.
like, you don't know this, you idiot.
Right, and I was there like once at least, I think, in his office, and somebody had come in, and Larry had clearly spent time with him and like tried to coach him and help him out and stuff, and the guy like ignored like everything Larry said, and Larry was not happy.
No.
You just wasted my time. You just wasted my time. Oh.
All right, so I'm gonna jump back and sort of split a question that Mark already asked, which is, when you were a kid, were you aware of G.I. Joe, the 60s or 70s?
Oh yeah, I had them. I had the big. I had the big guys.
You had the 12-inch.
And then with the lifelike hair, and I had a Jeep. I had stuff. Yeah, I was super into it.
Did you get them as a kid? Were they hand-me-downs from?
No, they were.
They were
I
yours.
wanted them, man. Yeah, I wanted them, and I had one of the very first one. It had like kind of the plastic helmets and stuff, and like these wonky hands that you can't like put on anything. And in fact, later on, and there's a point where like suddenly like middle school happens and all that goes away.
Yeah.
And then
You're going to be in a band.
going to be in a band, and I like suddenly girls are interesting, and like cars I want to drive, all of this kind of stuff. But I had remember the Noble Knights.
We're both shaking our head no.
Dude, Noble Knights. Again, they were like life-size action, fully articulated, right? And like with a horse, and then all of this like plastic armor.
Right.
The pieces. I mean, and the horse had full armor. I mean, it was like these were like straight-on knights, but their hands were like flexible and malleable. So I know, like, I took the hands off of one of them and stuck it on my G.I. Joe. So a little Frankensteining there. So yeah.
Okay, so.
So yes, I was.
And did your childhood G.I. Joes did that end up in like an attic, or did it end up?
I gave them to somebody, and my mother was so upset. Oh, she was so mad. So,
Why?
I don't know why.
Was this you were older and it was okay to get rid of them, or was this? She was upset because you were 8 and you were going to want them back the next day.
No, I was probably older than 8. But I was just kind of like, I'm done with this, so off we go. Yeah, here you can have them.
That's interesting because usually it's the opposite. The story you hear is the parent gives them away.
Oh no, that happened to my albums. She sold them all in a garage sale. I went off to art school and I came back. I'm like, where? Oh, yeah, I sold them.
You've outgrown music.
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, so
I had those original Kiss albums, So.
all right, so you're interacting with Hama, who writes G.I. Joe, but he's an editor of other comics.
Uh-huh.
How did you get G.I. Joe?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But the yearbook.
The yearbook was the first thing I did.
When you start your ongoing run, that first issue is very shortly after the yearbook.
The yearbook, yeah. And all that happened pretty quick. Like we're on. Here we go. That kind of thing. So
Your first regular issue is the Russ Heath inked issue?
Oh no, it was before that one. It was the Major Blood issue, which
it's all in Britain. It's all in Britain. It was just castles and things and British guys with the hats, the like the like British commando dudes and stuff. I think I don't know.
57, side by side with Destro.
But yeah, you did have like, I think over the course of your first 4 issues, I think you had 4 different inkers. But you did have the first one was
Is it Fred?
Kim de Mulder, who I think
He teaches at the Kubert School now.
Oh wow!
Here's a question: Fred Fredericks, Kim de Mulder, Russ Heath,
and Bob McLeod.
Bob McLeod. Can you talk about your pencils on those early issues and those inkers?
I just feel bad for all of them.
Okay.
They all saved me.
All right, well, here's it. That's great and diplomatic. Here's a different question. You're an art guy, and you also ink. Can you muse a little on those 4 inkers and how they draw or how they ink? Or how one of them particularly strikes you?
They're all good. I'm being diplomatic again, but Russ Heath was my favorite, and because I was like Russ Heath, he was my hero.
Because he
when
had
I was
drawn
a kid.
Joe, war comics.
Sergeant Rock. Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. And so super into it. But I was really glad because I didn't find out until after I'd finished the issue that Russ was inking it. Because if I'd known beforehand, I'm sure I just would have just froze up and like we'd still be waiting for it, that kind of thing. So yeah, Bob's stuff was he inked all the covers. His stuff was very slick, wonderful, great draftsman. Kim just did that one issue, so I don't have a lot of And again, like I was just too busy trying to like just get stuff done, like get this done every month.
And I think after those initial few issues, I think the inker that did the majority of your issues, who then followed you into Nth Man, was Fred Fredericks.
Fred Fredericks, yeah. And he was a delightful guy. And he used to draw Mandrake for the Mandrake the Magician or something for like papers back in the day.
Penciled ending.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He did the strip. It was a strip, right? And I would I would talk to him, and he was just delighttul. And I just remember I would like be super late on stuff, and he'd just be like, don't worry about it. Oh, these are great. Oh, I see you drew Cher here. And like, because Larry was all about like, this person is this person. This general is Marlon Brando, and his assistant is Paula Abdul, and
Hama is casting.
And yeah, he's casting act, which I love, because now you're not like spinning around trying to design. You have something to go on,
which is either for the artist to have something to hang on, or Larry to write a character.
Sure.
Or both.
Both, yeah. I just know it's super helpful if you're designing a world. They're like, here, this is what they look like.
Did you meet or sit next to Fred Fredericks?
No, I never met him in person. It was always over the phone.
Did you mail in your pages or take in your pages?
That was back in the caveman days. Like sure, you sent your stuff in, you sent your stuff to Marvel.
You were in New Jersey.
Yes, and I think he was in one of these states above New Jersey.
Connecticut.
Yeah,
aren't all the inkers, aren't all the retired, semi-retired newspaper strip artists?
They're in Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Yeah.
And did you stay locally to New York? Because
I lived in Jersey for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then
in the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah. And basically my 20s were spent in New Jersey.
And you FedExed your penciled pages. Mm-hmm. You didn't take them in.
Occasionally. I mean, you go in once a month, and they take you to lunch, and then you go meet your dudes later for drinks. So.
Can you talk about? I imagine living just how far outside of New York City were you?
It's probably an hour out.
On the train.
On the train.
I imagine being in your 20s,
mm-hmm.
having played music in high school
mm-hmm.
in a Midwestern state.
Mm-hmm.
New York offers a lot of interesting opportunities.
Unreal.
Can you tell us a little about...
My mind was blown.
Tell us about being in New Jersey, being in New York in your 20s.
Well, I can say that Times Square was really different then than it is now. Very different. I learned about a lot of different music going to the art school. Because I went to school with all of these dudes that grew up in other parts of it. Because I just remember here, Iowa just being very, there were just like certain things, everybody like Leonard Skinner and, AC/DC or Van Halen. But like suddenly I get to New Jersey and like, oh, look, new wave, punk, all of these various things that I had like no idea existed. So it definitely opened my mind. And New York is for a little kid from the Midwest, it's an eye opener. So that's all I'll say.
Did you? Okay, you had played music in high school, and now you were in New York, where there are clubs and venues.
Yeah.
And Larry Hama was playing music. Did you play music while you were drawing G.I. Joe and Morbius?
Morbius. I had a working band when I was doing Morbius.
And that's like 94?
Something like that, yeah.
95?
I even drew us into an issue of the band playing in an issue of Morbius. So yeah, I did that, and I actually jammed with Larry's band once in their rehearsal studio. Yeah, drug my little Telecaster into the city, and it was super fun. And then because they rehearsed in this building where all these bands, and I'm sure that's like long gone now. Because like all of these kind of cool, decrepit things have been gentrified and turned into expensive apartments and whatnot. So, but his band, the Chaotix, like I think they're like one of their main dudes wasn't there that night, so it was okay for me to come. So, and I could chunk along and play some songs. And then and I was in like a working band when I was during Morbius.
What was your band called?
The 3 Martini Lunch.
The 3 Martini Lunch. Okay.
It's based on a Graham Parker song. So,
did you have a lot of gigs, or did you just practice?
No, we played a couple times a month. Local bars and different towns.
While you were drawing Morbius.
While I was trying to draw Morbius, yes.
Okay.
Bobby Chase wasn't happy that I was in the band. Put it that way. She was my editor.
Doing other things when
I should have been doing that. Yeah.
When you're on G.I. Joe, some issues you pencil, and some issues you do breakdowns, and then at the end of your run, there are some issues that are you and some issues that are Marshall Rogers. I also think at some point in there, the book goes bi-weekly. But can you talk about keeping to a monthly schedule on G.I. Joe?
It's hard. It was hard. That's one of the things I remember about drawing G.I. Joe. Was just like, God, I gotta crank this out every month, man. And there's a million characters. There's a million vehicles. There's a million. It's like say you're doing a World War II story, for instance, right? Like Sergeant Rock or whatever. Like the GIs all basically dress the same, right? The Germans all basically dress the same, right? And so, but G.I. Joe, that doesn't happen. Like everybody is completely different. All of these vehicles are wonky, and as a studio mate of mine said, like so many of these characters are designed by someone that only had to draw it once. Because there's just all of this bits and things and stuff, and it's just like, you got to do that over 22 pages. That's, So it was a haul.
And you made a reference at the beginning of our interview to reference. Mm-hmm. So there are all these figures and vehicles. Mm-hmm. What did Hasbro send you, or what did Marvel Editorial send you?
I would get typically a line drawing from one view of this toy, and off you go. And now I got to figure out how this looks from various different angles.
The way you're holding your hands, you're describing a vehicle.
Yeah, the bubble thing.
The trouble bubble.
That bubble thing that Cobra Commander bounces around in, which just has to be super easy to control, I'm sure. So So it was just like a Russ Heath drawing from one view, and then like the issue would come out, and then 2 or 3 months later they would send me the toy.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, this would have been really handy. So that kind of thing.
So you, at some point you accumulated a collection of the figures. I did,
and then over years of moving, and then my daughter, who was little at the time, she basically destroyed them all. I'm going to blame her. So like I don't have any of that stuff anymore. So
but like some of the recurring characters and things, you would actually have the opportunity to have the.
Yeah, I even had one of those. The big helicopter, with the Cobra helicopter with the
Mamba.
I had one of those. I had a Viper, tanks and stuff. Yeah, I had a lot of stuff. So yeah, but it was always after the fact. It was always after you needed it.
After the point, it would be useful to have. Yeah,
exactly.
How was the page rate? How were the royalties? Or if that's too direct and rude, how do those compare to other books you did after, like Punisher or Excalibur or Morbius?
Well, I don't think there's any royalties on G.I. Joe.
You don't recall getting any?
No, I don't think so. I may be wrong.
Okay.
Because I can never read their royalty statements when they send them to me. Like, I don't know what all of these things are.
Okay, I don't mean now when Marvel reprints old stuff, and of course Marvel wouldn't be reprinting G.I. Joe right now.
Right.
Because I think Larry has described the royalties on G.I. Joe as good because it was a higher selling book.
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't seem like I get like thousands and thousands of dollars.
I mean, no one's getting reprint fees now.
Right.
I mean that because the books, like the royalty system that Jim Shooter put into place, where if a book sold over a certain amount.
Right.
I mean, just the circulation.
Exactly.
On first press.
And I think there's some slightly conflicting kind of stories that maybe artists were paid slightly more because it's successful, or slightly less because maybe Hasbro had to have a cut, and you'd have a little bit off to allow for the extra funds.
I don't remember tons of royalty checks happening. No, that's not true. I made decent royalty on like the first couple issues of Morbius or whatever, but it was like the early '90s and everything was like crazy, and suddenly you're getting like a $40,000 royalty check for like what, Of course,
one issue of Morbius.
Yeah, like the first issue or something, and of course I called my dad first thing.
Was this one?
I told you, Dad.
Oh yeah, and he's just like, Jesus Christ.
Was this one that came in like a poly bag with a trading card?
Maybe.
The first issue of Morbius is a crossover with Ghost Rider 28, and then Ghost Rider, Blaze, Spirits of Vengeance 1, Morbius 1.
Midnight Suns crossover?
Rise of the Midnight Suns is the name of the crossover. Darkhold pages from the Book of Sin, issue number 1. And then, now that it's 5 months later, Ghost Rider, I think 32. So Howard Mackey and I think Bobby Chase were sort of mostly in charge.
I bought that at the time because I thought it comes in a poly bag,
so it must be cool.
And I'm gonna if I keep this, then maybe I'll be a millionaire.
It'll be worth money. They only printed 850,000 of them, so like,
I think there might have been a couple.
I could be in the dough. So
okay, so all right, G.I. Joe was an action comic, and Morbius was a sort of a horror comic, right?
Sort of a horror
You
comic.
did 3 issues of Excalibur. You did some Punisher.
Nth Man.
You did, of course, Nth Man, which is action sci-fi. But you want to draw like Sergeant Rock.
Yeah.
So how does it feel to be drawing these books that are action books and combat books? How does it feel to be drawing, Excalibur? Like your specialty or your interest?
I feel like there's many things that I just fail miserably at, and Excalibur would be one of them. I'm not crazy about what I did on it, and I'm not like necessarily a girly artist, because I just remember the whole thing was at some girls' school, and I just wanted to be super naughty with it all, but like I can't do that, But come on, I'm in a girls' school, so those kind of things I don't think I was that good at.
But Punisher is an action book, and
Sure.
G.I. Joe is an action book.
Sure.
And so surely that's like drawing Sergeant Rock, right?
Not really.
Why not?
Because it's not Sergeant Rock. It's not World War II,
It's not war.
It's not war. Yeah. Even though that's not like I don't remember it being I was always just happy to have work. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like, oh my, they're not giving me a war, because there weren't war books anymore. That doesn't happen. There is no Sergeant Rock. There's no The Losers. There's none of that stuff anymore. It's a different time, right? So, and I just remember being happy to have work. Like, I got another job. Oh my God.
I had a question about the early issues of G.I. Joe, because I guess your run sort of comes hot on the heels of quite a long run from Rod Wiggan, and your styles are quite sympathetic. It's not like a jarring change in style. Was kind of just, were you asked to kind of bear that in mind as you were drawing?
No.
It wasn't sort of like anything. Try to be a bit like that guy.
No. And I've never, because I've been asked that before, like, oh, if you get on this book after so and so is doing, do they want you to like? No one's ever said that to me. You just get on it and you do your thing.
I feel like editors, this monthly grind, an artist is slowing down or they move on to something else, the editor has got to get someone reliable.
That's the whole thing.
Talented or
That's
talented
the whole
enough
thing.
and reliable. And sometimes it's a new editor and they want to put their stamp on it. So they'll get someone who draws differently, or they'll get someone who's young and new. I think it's a very nice coincidence that Wiggum and Wagner draw more similarly.
And both of our names start with W.
I also think that even though Marvel in the 80s has like Arthur Adams, Walt Simonson, and Bill Sienkiewicz, it also has a lot of guys who draw like John Byrne, Ron Wilson, Al Milgrom, like post-Marvel 60s, 70s style.
Yeah.
You drew quite a lot of G.I. Joe covers, and I guess probably the interior artist who's drawn the most covers up to that point, because it was like Zek and stuff before. Did you often work from Hammer?
Always. Always. Larry's doing his cover sketch. There you go. Off you go. So.
And that was fine.
Yeah, but every now and then I'd be like, I want to do my own, that kind of stuff. So why do I have to do Larry's every time? So
when you drew other Marvel series, Morbius or some Punisher work, did you do your own cover sketches?
Yeah, those were my designs.
Okay. Okay.
But G.I. Joe, Larry always did a cover sketch.
And what happened to his cover sketches after?
I don't know. Well, I don't know. I just don't know how, because all of this is like pre-computer. So it's not like, oh, here's his sketch, off you go. But I must have had a copy of it, right? Somehow.
I think you might have had the original. I think he did it in pencil in 8.5 by 11, and I think they went to the artist. He didn't keep copies.
No.
Can you talk about how it is to draw a cover as compared to a page or the next page?
Well, it's one image, right? Like, as opposed to like this page that has multiple panels. So it's, so you can kind of focus on that one image a little bit more. And I always found it was just part of the grind, because not I have to do this monthly book. God, now I got to do a cover. Like I don't have time for that. So it's just that kind of stuff.
Right, because they're in 4 weeks.
Yeah,
there are 5 weekdays.
Yeah, this is all coming out. So
and
let's go.
A book is 22 pages.
Yeah.
So if you do 1 page
a
day, you're behind.
Yeah.
You finish the book and then also do the cover.
Yeah.
But covers paid better.
Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. More money for a cover. Yay. So.
I had a question about G.I. Joe leading into Nth Man, because I think it was basically the next project.
Yes.
So how did that all come about?
I don't remember. I'm sure Larry's like, I have this project, Nth Man, and I think you should draw it. That kind of thing.
I'm going to ask a leading question because I might know the answer. Were you getting burnt out on
Yeah.
G.I. Joe?
Oh, yeah.
So if a next thing came along,
Yeah.
you might be interested.
I'm ready to go.
And in this case, this one I don't know the answer, I'm guessing. You knew the writer, you worked well together.
Yeah. Because I always love working with Larry. I mean, I love his scripts, his stories. It's like, it's super,
Why do you love working with Larry?
Well, he tells good stories, and
okay, so for someone who's not a writer, or someone who reads comics but doesn't think about how they're made, what do you mean? What makes a good comic script as opposed to a not good comic script?
Boy, that sounds. We got to be out of here in 20 minutes. No. I don't know. I just know that I'm more drawn to Larry's stories. And I don't know if it's just we have some, I don't know, some mystical bond.
Is there anything with this isn't about names or specific titles? Is there anything about comic scripts or plots you have worked from where you remember reading it and not being jazzed? Is there something in the
Yeah, a lot of it is just basically the content.
Okay.
Like I'm just not into turned on by this particular what we're doing here.
Okay.
Whereas like Nth Man, I was super into that. Like I'm super jazzed about all of that.
And how collaborative it was? Was there a discussion of what where it might be going? And
no, that was all his thing. So every issue is sort of a surprise to me. Oh, this is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But he did send me to a military bookstore in Manhattan to buy all the same books he had. So all he had to do was go into script and say, oh, this book on this page, this plate, this is the image of this Chinese soldier I want you to draw. This is, so because he'll talk about it. Like, he's like has had this library of books and he would loan them to people and then never get them back. Mm-hmm. So he just like this way, it was just super handy. He also like built me like a model M16 with a grenade launcher and he packed it in this thing so I could take it home on the train. But I still managed to break a sight off of it. And I think he still, is furious about that to this day. So
Ron is miming a 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah, carrying this gun. Yeah, this
full size.
carrying this gun in this foam core thing that Larry had made meticulously to take it back to New Jersey in. So I had that for a long time.
All right. Nth Man's supposed to run 24 issues.
Uh-huh.
It only runs 16.
Uh-huh.
How did you feel?
I think by the end Nth Man, I was burnt out too.
Okay.
Because I only have like so many issues of something in me. And then I'm just like, okay. And especially if like, because they kind of just throw stuff out, and maybe there's like the companies, I mean, and maybe there's a little promotional push at the beginning, but at some point all of that just goes away. And then like, oh dear, it's not selling, so let's try to turn it into an X-Men book now, or let's wrap it up because we're going to cancel it, so because it isn't selling. I always joke that like when somebody comes up and says, I read the Nth Man, and I'm like, oh, you're one of the 5 people. So that's great. So I don't, so I was ready for it to end, I'm sure, by the time it was done. So,
you did a lot of work at DC. Some of it's superhero, some of it's less traditional. You did that book with Keith Giffen.
Yeah, Book of Fate.
Called The Book of Fate. Mm-hmm. I have heard you say that you're not interested in drawing superhero comics.
I don't have a big kind of like, superheroes. Yeah.
Book of Fate was different.
Yeah.
Why?
It wasn't a straight up superhero thing, and it was just completely mad. I mean, it was just insane. Because Giffen, this world that Giffen's created for this is just insane, and I loved that. And it's all of this like weird, magical, mystic, just bizarro stuff happening. I mean, and so I dug that. The 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse come down, and super cool.
You worked in animation?
I did storyboards for Warner Brothers.
For how long?
A few years.
So you got out of comics in...
I've gotten out of comics a couple times, Tim.
Okay.
So they keep dragging me back in. So,
how did you find animating storyboards for animation?
Again, it was hard. You were talking, breaking down the schedule for like a comic book, do so many pages a day, and you're already behind. I always felt like that with animation.
But you don't have to noodle. There's less drawing, right?
No. There is more drawing. 8 minutes of animation, cartoon anime, because you have 8 minutes like segment to do. And
3 people are storyboarding a half hour. You're doing one of the 3 acts.
Exactly. And here it is. And you have 4 or 5 weeks. You're already behind. And if you have any plans, you should cancel them now.
And it's hundreds of panels. And camera moves. And notating it all. But animation pays better than comics, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was a little bit better, yeah.
But it's a little bit harder.
It's just a grind, and I found for myself, because you draw this comic book, and whether it comes out good or not, or whether you think it does, people see it. They see this thing that you drew, right? I did this thing. Here it is, this direct thing. Nobody sees the storyboards that you do. Except the animators, right? Or if like you're super into this cartoon and you're gonna watch like, here's my 8-minute section, here's my act, So I didn't like the fact that I'm like doing all this work, but no one ever sees it. And I guess it's like an ego thing, I guess, right? Like, oh, I want you to show off my
All right,
work.
so before I hand the mic back to Mark to ask some questions, just remind us what TV cartoons did you storyboard for?
I think like Legion of Superheroes and Scooby Doo and some Batman and
Was it The Batman? Or was it
I think
one of
so.
the movies, the animated movies?
No, I don't know. I don't remember, and it's been a while.
Do Justice League or Justice League Unlimited? Maybe not.
Legion of Superheroes, because it's all like the teenager ones.
Okay.
Right? And the space ones, the ones that are out in,
Also,
which one.
we'll just double check this at IMDb.
Yeah. So,
Hello, it is me, Mark of the future. I have looked up on IMDb and discovered that Ron's credits are for 4 episodes of Batman the Brave and the Bold and 4 episodes of The Legion of Superheroes. I return you back to the distant past.
and I worked with, I shared a studio with a fella by the name of Adam Van Wyck. And he's still here in town, and he works on the Harley Quinn cartoon, and he's worked on like the Despicable Me cartoons, Ice Age movies. He is amazing. And when I first started working with him doing storyboards, like I would do my boards and then give them to Adam, and then he would go over them, and then there would be tons of Post-it notes of all the things you did wrong. So I really
great that your neighbor spent the time.
Yeah, and eventually and because he's genius at it. And I thought like, oh, this will be easy. I've drawn comics. It's got to just transition into that. No, it's different. It's a different discipline. The only commonality is the drawing.
Right, because in animation you're only seeing one image at a time. You have time, movement, and sound.
Exactly.
In comics, you see many images at a time.
But this
Don't
one
have time.
image, like I could draw a panel of the 3 of us talking and a number of word balloons above us, right? And that encapsulates a certain amount of time, right? I don't have to do an A pose and a B pose and like all of these kind of things that you have to do for animation, and you are thinking about camera movement in a sense in comics, where I have a long horizontal panel. Maybe I want your eye to pan across that, but like for storyboards, like you're indicating all the camera moves, so it's just a whole nother thing, and it was hard, but it was a great learning thing.
Let me hand the mic back to Mark to ask about IDW.
Well, actually, you came back to G.I. Joe 2 times because you came back to do a short...
5 pages.
Oh, some stuff for IDW, right? Yeah,
This was for Devil's Due.
Where is that art?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you think you still have it?
I think
It's Larry breakdowns, and I don't think this was.
Yeah, I may have that art. I don't know. It's got to be around somewhere.
Because when it was republished,
because wasn't it the Snake Eyes thing? It was part of the Snake where he like goes to the thing, but it's kind of after that or before or something.
Yeah, 5-page prelude.
Right.
he jumps out of the plane and
See, and a lot of that, because nowadays, since you don't send your pages in and then they send it to an inker, right? Like you scan it, and then they send that file to an inker. And then they printed out blue line and they ink it. So there's like 2 bits.
This was you doing tighter pencils over Larry breakdowns.
I think so.
There is no inker.
Oh, okay.
So I think whatever.
I was thinking of like some issues that I did for that.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. So did you want to ask any other question about that 5 pages? I just want to know where the art is. I want Skybound to reprint it.
Yeah.
I'll look for it.
Ron is shaking his head in the I don't know gesture. His eyes are bugging out. And
I don't know. I don't know. There's so much stuff.
But then a number of years later, you do some various, like a few
About
issues,
2 issues, 3.
for IDW and some covers. So can you tell us about that? How that all came to?
Again, I think I just called whoever was the editor and like they gave me work. My problem with IDW is they didn't pay. They just, suddenly my page rate went from up here to down here. And I'm just like...
They did pay you. You mean they didn't pay good?
No, they didn't pay the rates. They didn't pay good rates. Right, yeah. And I'm just like, I can't justify doing this. And then I would try to ask, like, inkers that I like Bill Reinhold, people like that. Like, hey, you want to ink this thing? And then he would get in touch with them, and then they're paying him peanuts too. And then Bill would be like, I can't do this. I can't afford it.
Okay, so presumably, if they had paid better, maybe you would have drawn more GI Joe for IDW.
Sure.
Because so it's not like you were. It's like you didn't want to go back.
Absolutely. I would it was super, because again, I'm working with Larry, we're doing the G.I. Joe thing. I know people dig it now, right?
Enough years have passed.
Yeah, enough years have passed.
But if you're going to get bored of it, you got a year and a half until you get bored of it.
Exactly. That's how it works. But they just didn't pay, and I can't, so now you don't have like great inkers because they can't hire somebody of like a certain quality, because like they're just not paying.
Or an inker that can justify spending lots and lots of time.
Right. So, and I'm not a big fan of the whole new digital, like this guy's inking from this blue line thing, and now there's like this inked version floating around out there, and that's the one that people want to buy. They're less interested in your pencils. Right.
As an art collector, I would be more interested in the pencils than
mileage
the inks
varies.
On the blue, but
mileage varies.
But you're the guy selling originals, so
well, it's just that's typically how it goes.
But you're saying it is a weird feeling that there's now the artwork is split as these two different outfits.
and like I don't think you're getting all the little nuances with this blue line printout.
Right. Okay.
The
So
pencils
just to clarify. You penciled your pages,
yes.
You scanned them, and then
send a file.
You turned the artwork from scans of pencils into all light blue, which they then send the inker.
And of course, the light blue doesn't reproduce.
The inker prints on...
The inker generally does that.
Okay, the inker turns it into light blue, prints it on Bristol, and then inks directly on this Bristol, and then when they rescan it, it's only the black that gets picked up, or they can, in Photoshop, very easily knock out the light blue.
Exactly.
It's not new characters. Those few IDW issues. It's sort of
October Guard.
The October Guard. I love them. They're super fun.
The question that I'm asking in two parts is, because you were older and better, and because you're not getting thrown tons of new characters every issue, how was it drawing this book now later?
I had more fun. I did. I just didn't. Again, I have trouble getting past like low page rates, because I'm like now like, oh, how long have I been in this industry and I'm making less money? I should have been an insurance salesman, that kind of stuff. So like that bugs me. So
that Morbius check is a long way.
Long way. That was a long time ago. Those days are gone. So,
A few paychecks ago.
Yeah, I bought a house with that. So.
And there's a new publisher of G.I. Joe who are attracting some of the biggest names in the industry to work on the book, including ex-classmates doing covers.
Yep.
If they were to give you a call and say, fancy dusting off the old...
I'm waiting breathlessly for it. So, no. I would be happy to do something for them. Sure.
Right.
Also, we think Skybound pays pretty well. But,
don't know yet.
But separate from the page rate, you would want to draw a G.I. Joe.
Sure.
Cover.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
A cover or an issue?
Whatever. Yeah. Sure. I have other stuff I have to get done at the moment before I. But anyway, yes, I would. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If they call, you'll answer. At least.
Yeah. I'll be surprised though, honestly. So
when you look at the little bit of IDW work you did, or maybe you don't look back at your old work.
Not a lot.
Sort of in your memory, can you? Because I see some differences in your Marvel art around 87 and your IDW art around, I forget, 2012. Is that anything you can put into words? Or should we just cut this question from the tape?
I think my stuff has gotten simpler.
What do you mean?
A little more designy and a little less noodly.
Is there an artist that makes some reference to?
Alex Toth.
Okay.
I want to be Alex Toth.
I want to be Alex. And we're ending on that.
Yeah, no.
For our listeners who don't know a lot about Toth.
Another old one.
What is it about Toth?
He first of all, he's a fabulous designer. Characters, panels, pages, All of this is because it's all design.
Shapes.
Shapes. It's all shapes.
Emphasis.
And he eliminates, and he even talks about it like he has this list of things that he to give to a future artist. These are things that you should draw or that you could do to make your stuff better. And one of them was condense this image down to the bare essentials and then just draw the shit out of those. Right? So that's what he does. And so there's no messing about. You know, it's all like, boom, this is exact. Everything has weight. Blacks are spotted beautifully, you know. So
for our listeners who want to get to know Toth, he doesn't have a lot of definitive runs on titles or characters because he hopped around a lot. But IDW has published 3 incredible books on him. One is an overview, one's about his comics work, one's about his animation work. It's Genius Isolated, Genius Illustrated, Genius
And he also
Animated.
designed tons of stuff for Hanna-Barbera.
That's in the 3rd book.
Oh yeah,
That's-
okay.
that's
Yeah.
Genius
I mean,
Animated.
tons of stuff for Hanna-Barbera.
Right. Space Ghost.
Thundercats, Space Ghost.
Storyboarded
gobs of stuff.
Super Friends.
Johnny Quest, you know, stuff like that. Yeah. Oh sure.
Did you ever meet him?
No. He's another guy whose kind of reputation preceded him. So yeah. And
Happy to view from afar.
yeah, you know, don't always want to meet your heroes sometimes. I don't know, so I never met him, but like Gray Morrow and Gray's the one that really turned me on to Toth, because he was a huge Toth fan and collected all of his work.
And Larry Hama has talked about
Certainly.
how great
Certainly.
Toth's work was.
Yep, certainly.
Should we ask the question? So we got it covered about
I'm done.
where people can find you out there in the world of the internet. You know, if you want to promote, you know, commissions, original art sales.
I do that stuff. I have a rep at Catskills Comics, and I don't remember the website and all that right at the moment. And then you can contact me at www.rjwagner.com if you want. So there you go. And I have a, book of face thing and an Instagram-y thing and all of that. So
Since we're sitting in front of a laptop with the internet, yes, catskillcomics.com. Welcome to Catskill Comics,
Yeah, there we
original and commission art.
yeah, Scott Kress will be happy to take an order and send it my way. So yeah.
And you do a lot of conventions, just one convention?
Just this one.
Just assembly required once a year,
Yeah.
minus pandemics.
Minus pandemics, because it's I'm like blocks away.
But you did go to New York Comic Con
Years ago,
1 year. You just
I just floated around.
you just sat at Larry Hama's
Yeah,
table.
Larry let me sit down. He took pity on me. So
In Iowa, the home of the Nth Man's orphanage.
exactly. That's it. Exactly.
Is that a place that we could go visit? Is that a
No,
building
but
we could go
the
reference?
the gravel road, I could take you on any gravel road, and you'd go, oh, this is the way to the orphanage, isn't it? So yeah. So because I was very aware of gravel roads and cornfields and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I did all my Dukes of Hazzard driving on those when I was 16.
Was this a requirement for Larry? Can you please set a good chunk of it in Iowa?
I don't know. No, I don't know. And I think he probably did that because he knew I was from Iowa. So I think that was partly like he just kind of throw a little something my way, that kind of deal. So, but again, I I don't remember big discussions with Larry before Nth Man. Like this is what it's going to be. That kind of stuff. So I'm just drawing it, man. I'm just a hired gun.
So this weekend at Assembly Required, you'll be selling prints and autographing comics.
Yep.
And
If
drawing,
you can find them, I'll autograph them.
Drawing some sketches.
Drawing some sketches. Yep.
Well, I've run out of questions.
Yeah, I think that was it before we on the
Yeah,
door.
I'm waiting for
right.
them to come back.
Yes, we're about to get kicked out of this room
Yeah.
that we're squatting
Thanks for
in.
having me, guys.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
A pleasure and a privilege.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I sing a variation of the 1988 TV toy commercial jingle
Do you?
as our sign-off.
Really? Can't wait.
What do I say? Oh yeah. So I think, Tim, that is us done. But until next time, remember that.
Nope. Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Fantastic.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Thanks, guys. those questions weren't that mean.
Yeah.
All right. Because he didn't ask me a whole lot about being late with stuff.
And then we have like a half an hour segment at the end where we say how awful you were.
Good, please. He was drunk. My God.